into the rest. Let me ask you to keep Brother Howard Pickens in prayer, who is a member of our church that lives in Memphis, Michigan. He lost his mother this morning, Mrs. Rosalind Washington in Detroit. And so we don't have any arrangement yet. And we want to keep our members who are grieving the loss of loved ones in prayer. So any other special prayer requests tonight?
I have a prayer of thanksgiving.
Yes, sir.
I went to the doctor yesterday, and because the medication that she had me on for my blood pressure, it would make me dizzy. When I went to the doctor, I took the medicine with me. She took my blood pressure, and she threw the medicine away. She says, "You don't need it anymore."
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
So I'm going to just do what I have to do to stay off of it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Staying in shape helps, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I walk a lot, as everybody knows.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Fastest walking man in town.
Oh, yeah.
Can't keep up with him in the car.
Because we saw him at the corner. We saw him at the corner of Michigan Ave. My husband and I coming to church, so when we got out of the car, he was coming through that door.
Yeah.
We said, wow.
I saw him one day walking, and I tried to catch him, see if he was riding. I came around the corner and he disappeared.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you turned 80 this year, is that right?
I turned 80.
Amen. There's hope for me. Praise the Lord. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for your goodness and how much you love us. Thank you for the richness of your word. Lord, some of us have questions about things of which we're not sure, so we pray that you give us wisdom as we answer them tonight. And then, God, keep us as we shine in this dark world. In Jesus' name we pray. All right. So, what questions do you have for me tonight? Y'all want me to pull out the other ones? Okay, hold on. Okay. Let's deal with these four, and then we'll get out of here. That's these are the four questions that were submitted, and I don't know if the people that submitted this were watching at noon or they're watching now, so we'll hit these and then we'll deal with them. So the first question that we got submitted was, what is the significance of numerology in the Bible? And I recently wrote an article about that, because there are times that the Bible seems to use certain numbers. So, for instance, when Noah is in the ark, how long are they? How long does it rain?
40 days and 40 nights.
40 days and 40 nights. In Matthew chapter 4, when Jesus is tempted by the devil, how long was he tempted?
That was 40 days too, wasn't it?
It was 40 days and 40 nights.
Yes.
When Jesus is resurrected from the dead, how long was he on earth?
40 days.
40 days. Okay? So the number 40 then must mean something, right?
Yeah.
You would think that, but God doesn't reveal what it means. So there are people that will look at these things and try to draw conclusions and say that 40 means judgment because God used it this way. But the problem with that is there is no, quote, Bible code that tells us that 3 means something and then 7 means something and then 21 or 12 or 24. Even though those numbers may appear over and over, God does not let us in on why he uses those numbers. Okay? And so don't go play 721. I know y'all don't do that. If you win, pay your tithes. Isn't that right? Yeah, plus give an offering. So don't read into the Bible stuff that's not there. Okay? That is spiritual. Numerology is a superstition. It is actually like what's the guy's name? Sidney Omar. used to be in the paper all the time, like doing the horoscope. Okay? Numerology is not biblical. It is an invention of people to try to explain what they don't understand. Okay? Yes, sir?
We don't understand it now, but we will.
If the Lord chooses to reveal it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But his purpose in using those numbers is not revealed explicitly in Scripture.
Right.
So like 12, there's 12 tribes. Then there's multiples of 12. There's 24 elders. But does that mean that the 24 elders are the 12 tribes plus the leaders of the 12 tribes plus the 12 apostles? We don't know. It just says there were 24 elders. And so we have to be careful not to try to read things into that.
Guys,
Yes. So let's deal with the next one. This next question was, what was Paul's thorn in the flesh? Okay. So this thorn in the flesh passage is in 2 Corinthians. Okay.
I want to do it.
2 Corinthians 12. No, I was clicking the thing, but it wasn't, I wasn't pushing the right button. 2 Corinthians 12. Okay. So, we got to get a little bit of the background. So the question that was sent in was, what was Paul's thorn in the flesh? So, in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul gives us some background. So let's read this and then we'll get to where the thorn is. Okay? 2 Corinthians 12, it is doubtless improfitable for me to boast. I will come to visions and revelations of the Lord. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or whether out of the body I do not know, God knows. Such a one was caught up to the third heaven. So those teachers who were just in teachers meeting, there it is. Okay? By the way, Paul is referring to himself, but he doesn't reveal that to us just yet. He's being humbled by referring to himself in the third person. Okay? And I know such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows how he was caught up into paradise and heard inexpressible words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter. Such a one I will boast. Yet of myself I will not boast except in my infirmities. For though I might desire to boast, I will not be a fool, for I will speak the truth. But I refrain lest anyone should think of me above what he sees me to be or hears from me. So what Paul is saying is that he experienced this heavenly vision, but he wasn't allowed to share it. And so right after he explains that, he says, and lest I should be exalted above measure. That's how we know that the person he's referring to is him, because of verse 7. By the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me. So let's look at how he describes it. Let's back up just a little bit. He says in verse 6 that he will, in verse 5, that he will boast in what?
His infirmities.
His infirmities. We jump down to verse 7. Lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelation, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, what?
My grace is sufficient for you.
For my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most glad that I would rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. So let's look at the description of the thorn. So what did it cause to happen? What was its purpose?
Satan buffeted him.
That's a description of it. So the word buffet means to punch. Okay? And so when we were learning to box when I was growing up, They always taught us to keep our guard up. But Paul says his guard wasn't good enough. Somehow the enemy was getting punches slipped in on him. And it felt like he was taking a beating. How else does he describe it? What else does it do to him?
We should realize that God has what holds his back.
Yes, that's true.
God is sufficient. His grace is sufficient.
God's grace is sufficient. Does God move the thorn?
No.
So what are its effects? What is God's purpose in allowing the thorn to stay?
Keep reminding them.
Keep in mind.
Keep him what?
Keep reminding them when you're weak, you think about other things, especially when you're real weak.
Yeah. So it's designed to keep him from thinking too highly of himself and to keep him focused on his mission. Yeah. Because it causes him to be what?
Humble.
Humble. But physically, look at it. There's a word he keeps using over and over again. I will not boast except in my infirmities. Okay? Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times. He said, my grace is sufficient, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly I will rather boast in my infirmities. So this thing, whatever it is, makes him weak. It makes him feel ill.
So, Pastor, was that in this vision, what early on he was saying he could not tell?
Yes.
So whatever happened was in that vision that he couldn't share with anybody.
He couldn't share the visions. The visions could have made him feel superior to everyone else. And so in order to keep him from getting the big head and being arrogant, God allows him to have this painful experience that recurs in his life. To get this, sometimes it happens to us as well. The Lord allows things that come in our lives that keep us from being too arrogant. Because what does arrogance do to our Christian witness? What'd you say?
I said turn people.
It turns people off. If I walk around like I'm better than you, that will turn other people off.
Amen.
And so to keep Paul, and understand, Paul had reasons to brag. He had the right pedigree. He spoke 5 languages. He was a Roman citizen. He was well educated. His family came from a great city. And apparently he was well off. But he had a problem. Okay. Now, the truth is, for the person that asked the question, we don't know what the thorn was. And there's been a lot of speculation. Because of Paul's visit to Galatia and what he said to the Galatians about them wanting to give him his eyes, some people have tried to say he had some kind of ocular disease. But we don't know. Okay? And what's encouraging and helpful to me is if Paul struggled, and he's Paul the Apostle that wrote half the New Testament, I'm all right. Because I have some struggles too. Okay? Now, the other thing about the thorn in the flesh is the word means that it was something that got under his skin. So it may not have been visible to other people, but it was painful for him. Anybody ever had any painful experiences while walking with the Lord and being faithful to him? Yes. Yeah. All right. Let me grab this way. I'm going to leave the last one off. Does God cut people off? Does God cut people off? So to answer this, I'm going to take you to a few scriptures. One of them is 2 Peter chapter 3. Let's go there for a minute. 2 Peter chapter 3, beginning at verse 8. Does God cut people off? 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. But beloved, do not forget this one thing, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and as 1,000 years as 1 day. Somebody call Sister Murphy and give her that scripture. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness, but is what?
Long-suffering.
Long-suffering toward us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. So does the Lord cut people off? 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8 says that God is long-suffering, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. By the way, that's why some of these heathens are still alive. Because the Lord has given them time to do what?
Repent.
Repent. And what does repent mean? Turn away from sin and turn to God. Okay? But there's another passage that deals with this. So let's go to John chapter 3, verse 12, I think is where we want to start. John chapter 3, verse 12. And this is this long, extended conversation that Jesus has with Nicodemus at night, which seems to work. But you remember that Nicodemus winds up burying Jesus. If I told you earthly things and you did not believe, how do you believe if I tell you heavenly things? No one has ascended to heaven, but he who came down from heaven, that is the Son of Man, who is in heaven. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Now to understand this, we got to find out, why did Moses have to lift up the serpent in the wilderness? Okay? And that passage is found in Numbers chapter 21. Okay? So in Numbers chapter 21, starting at verse 7, well, we really should back up a little bit more, because the people complain about Pastor Moses, and they're sick of Pastor Moses, and they're sick of the food that God is providing them with, which is meager manna. And they're sick of not having enough water. They're just sick of everything. And God says, you're complaining, I'm tired of it. So what the Lord does is he dispatches fiery serpents among the people. They bite the people, and many of them die. So look at verse 7. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he may take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people. By the way, that's a lesson for those of us who are in leadership positions. Because when the people speak against you, you still have to do what?
Pray.
You still have to pray for them. Then the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent, set it on a pole. It shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. So Moses made a bronze serpent, set it on a pole, and put it on the pole. And so it was the serpent bitten one. When he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. So Moses walked around with the bronze serpent held up, and those that were bitten, when they looked at the serpent held up, what happened to them?
They lived.
So that's the background behind this statement in verse 14 of John chapter 3. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the Son of Man must be lifted up. However, there's a difference. In that passage in Numbers 21, who died? The people. In this passage in Genesis chapter 3, verse 14, what does it mean in the Greek culture for someone to be lifted up?
Crucified.
It means to be crucified. That whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting. But God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not
Perish.
but have
Everlasting life.
For God did not send his Son to the world to
Condemn the
but
world.
that the world through him might
Be saved.
He who believes in him is not
Condemned.
but he who does not believe is because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. Let me just keep reading. And this is the condemnation that light is coming to the world, and men love darkness rather than the light because their
Deeds are evil.
deeds are evil. So does the Lord cut people off?
Yes.
No.
He doesn't.
Who cuts them off?
Ourselves off.
They cut themselves off because they refuse to choose Christ.
So,
Yes, sir.
my question. I'm looking at Romans 1:26.
Yes.
And for this cause, God gave them up.
Hold up, D. Back up to 24.
Oh,
Go ahead.
This doesn't mean that they were cut off.
What does it mean that he gave them up to?
That's what, to have vile ways.
Reprobate mind.
Because what the Lord will allow somebody who is intent on sin to do is to go into their sin and experience the natural consequences of their sin. For what purpose? Look at verse 28. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over. And by the way, the verses that he's speaking about specifically speak about homosexuality. Okay? And God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents. Why did God give them over? Look at chapter 2, verse 1. Therefore, you are inexcusable.
Yeah, sure.
Oh man, whoever you are, who judge. Remember that when Paul is describing this, who was he writing to?
Romans.
The Roman what?
Church.
Roman believers, right?
You mean some of them were like that? Yeah. So what he's describing is the condition of people without Christ. But remember that the theme of the book of Romans is the redemption that comes from Christ alone. And so, as we keep going through the book of Romans, you get down to chapter 6. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound?
No.
Surely not.
How shall we who died to sin live in it any longer? Yeah. So it's not God's desire for people to perish. It's God's desire for people to
Live.
confess. So let's go to 1 John 1 and 9. If we confess our sins, he is what?
Faithful and just to forgive us our sins
And to
cleanse us from all unrighteousness.
So the key question is, what does it mean to confess?
To admit that you're sinning.
Okay, I'm going to take it to the next question so I can illustrate confession. So the question is here, the next question, did Adam ever ask for forgiveness? So let's look at Adam so we can see what confession looks like. Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. The serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree in the garden? I think we covered this once before. And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Did the Lord say that? No, he told me they just couldn't do what? Eat it. Eat it. As a matter of fact, when the Lord said this, where was Eve?
She wasn't there.
She wasn't even made yet. Okay? We know that from chapter 2. Then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows from the day that you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant for the eyes, and the tree was out to make one wise, she took up its fruit and yeah.
Will you slow down a little bit? You go too fast.
I'm sorry, brother. Let me slow down.
We been saying it.
She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were what?
Open.
And they knew that they were naked, and they
Sewed fig
fig leaves together and made themselves
coverings.
And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife did what?
Hid themselves
From the presence of the Lord among the trees of the garden. Then the Lord called him. Oh my goodness, I just saw something I never saw before. The same thing that they used to sin against God was the same thing that they hid themselves from him with. They sinned by eating from a tree, and when the Lord showed up, what do they try to hide behind?
trees.
Then the Lord called, and if I was preaching and I'm not, how did the Lord cure their sin? With a tree.
For the cross.
Yeah, because they hung him on the tree.
Oh, okay.
Don't you steal that, preacher. You got to write stuff down right now. Do it when you get away from here. Then the Lord God called to Adam and said to him, where? So he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I
Hid myself.
And he said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you that you should not eat? Then the man said,
The woman
whom
you
gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I
ate of it.
What did Adam just do? He did blame the woman, but what else did he do? He just confessed that he ate. Then the Lord said to the woman, what is this you have done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me.
And I ate.
She confessed. The Lord curses the serpent, makes provision for mankind's sin in verse 15. Tells the woman the natural consequences of her sin. Tells Adam the natural consequences of his sin. Still allows Adam to name Eve. And then in verse 21, what does the Lord do? God bless his wife and so also for Adam and his wife, the Lord God made tunics of skin and clothed them. When they sinned, what did they try to do? Hide. By making clothing out of tree leaves. But the Bible says without the shedding of blood,
there's no remission.
There's no remission of sins. And so what God does is he kills an animal and he covers what they can.
Praise the Lord.
If we confess our sins,
He's faithful and just to forgive us our sins.
Adam and Eve confess. They admit what they did this wrong. That's why some people will never get saved. Because they will not admit that they are wrong. they will not confess. And confession is not saying I'm sorry. Confession is agreeing with God about my sin. Okay? Our sin. Y'all looking at me like, that's right, Pastor, it was your sin.
Oh, no.
I just can't imagine you saints in here doing anything wrong, but I
Praise the
know
Lord.
somewhere down the line.
Oh, yes. Lord.
Oh, mercy. All right. Other questions?
Other sense, what you say? Other sense?
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned in your very first opening statement about if one allowed it to tithe. How does tithing fit in with our faith walk?
All right. Two scriptures. Let's go to Malachi chapter 3, and then stick a finger in 2 Corinthians chapter 8. So Malachi chapter 3, by the way, the book of Malachi deals with the injustice of the people in different ways. One of those ways in Malachi chapter 3 is that the people have robbed God by not giving what the Lord has required of them. Okay? And the result of that, Malachi chapter 3, well, the man robbed God, yet you have robbed him. But you say, in what ways have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. Years ago, I preached a sermon called There's Been a Robbery at the Church. A couple of people didn't get it, and they went out and spread a lie.
It went.
I said there was a robbery at the church. Okay? And there is every Sunday. In what ways have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with the curse, for you have robbed even this whole nation. What does God say in verse 10?
Bring
Bring
all
the
the
full
tithes
tithes
into the
into the
storehouse,
Why?
that there may be food in my house.
And
Try me now.
try me now and this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it, and I will rebuke the devourer for your sake, so that he will not destroy the fruit of your ground. Okay? Now, this is the thing that we have to recognize, that the land seed blessing is part of the covenant with Israel. Okay? I want to show you something in the New Testament. Let's go to Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. Because there are some people that will tell you that tithing is an Old Testament concept and it does not apply to the New Testament church. They will tell you that. Look at Matthew chapter 23, verse 23.
Whoa, ooh, that's kind of strong.
And the word woe is the invocation of a curse. So woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin. By the way, those are crops that they harvested. Okay? That become, after being harvested, spices. Okay? Anybody here like Mexican food?
Yes.
What makes Mexican food taste Mexican? Cumin. Okay? What makes black licorice taste the way it does? Anise. Okay? And you know what mint does? You pay tithe of mint, anise, and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law of justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. So the Lord is condemning them because they're tithing, but they're allowing justice to go undone. Sounds similar to our current culture today.
What did
What?
you say, Pastor? I'm sorry. I don't pick things up fast like these people do.
Let me rewind.
Okay, please.
In our current culture,
Okay.
we have people that meet all the religious requirements, but they leave out justice and mercy and faith.
Plain church.
Plain church. There is a huge debate right now over a statement that John MacArthur said that got taken out of context. And let's remember that John MacArthur walked with the Evers and the Kings in Mississippi from the beginning. but because he said that social justice and requiring people. So we've got our brother David Anden here, whom we love and who loves us, and who worships with us whenever he can be here. And comes to our Bible study and reminds us that the Gideons want us to help buy some Bibles so we can spread the word of God. I thought I'd just throw a plug in there. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But I can't mistreat Brother David if somewhere back in his background, his family may have owned slaves.
Right.
But there are some people that say that he should have a repentant attitude because of stuff that his forefathers did. And so they are demanding justice, but you can't get justice from dead people. Okay? And so there's this whole thing that's going on now where people are taking what MacArthur said out of context and are flaming mad about it because they say that evangelicals are neglecting justice and mercy and faith. And in some cases that's true, because there are some people that will tell you just preach the gospel. But the gospel always includes those elements. Because I cannot say that I love God whom I have not seen and hate my brother whom I see every day. Okay? And so Jesus deals with this concept of tithing again in the New Testament era. But then we go to 2 Corinthians chapter 8. And this discussion goes all the way through chapter 9. Okay? So this to me is the quintessential statement on New Testament giving. 2 Corinthians chapter 9 beginning at verse 6. And remember, this is written to the Corinthian church which was wealthy but who lied. The poor Macedonian church gave a great offering to help the mother church at Jerusalem. The Corinthian church said that they would, but they hadn't kept their word. So now here we get to chapter 9, verse 6, and Paul has told them, do what you say you're going to do. But then he reminds them the standard of giving. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also
Reap sparingly.
and he who sows
Bountifully.
will also reap
Bountifully.
so let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a
Cheerful giver.
cheerful giver, and God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you, always having all sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. As it is written, he has dispersed abroad, he has given to the poor, his righteousness endures forever. Look at verse 10. Now may he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food, supply and multiply the seed you have sown and increase the fruit of your righteousness. Let me stop right there. Let me back up just a little bit. So the measure of the return on giving is the what?
Reward.
Let me rewind that. The measure of the return on giving is based on the way we give. He who sows sparingly will also
Reap sparingly.
So if I have a kernel of corn and I break off one, what do you call it? A corn cob. Ear. Thank you. So glad you took that trip down south. An ear of corn. And I'm allergic to corn, that's why I couldn't remember. And I break off one little kernel and I put that in the ground, what do I get back?
A stalk.
A stalk. How many ears are on that stalk?
1, 2, or 3.
2 or 3. If we're producing in a great year, we get 3, maybe 4. When you take off one of those ears, how many kernels are on there?
Many.
Numerous. So here's my question. How many kernels are you going to plant?
Bunch.
Every one I can. Because what I want is more corn to come back. And if I plant one kernel, I get back a plant that has hundreds of kernels. So if I plant twice 2 kernels, I get 200-fold. If I plant 3, 400-fold. And what some people do is they hoard their corn and they never plant seed. And guess what happens the next year? They run out because they didn't do what? They didn't plant anything. Okay? Giving works the same way. If you want to give at the tithe level and just plant there, you'll get back that kind of harvest. But the New Testament standard giving goes beyond that. Let me tell you how I know that. Because there were taxes back then in addition to tithes.
The same thing now.
Yeah. So here's the other question. If I tithe, do I do it off the gross or the net? Huh?
That's an argument with a lot of people.
No, it isn't.
I said it is, I didn't say it was right.
Sure, send them to me. I'll help you with it.
Oh, yeah.
Here's why. You tithe off the gross because there's no guarantee once you get to a certain income level that you're even going to get a return. So if you assume that you're going to tithe off your income tax return, but you wind up paying taxes, you don't have any return to give the Lord in the first place. You tithe off of the gross, he got his anyway. Because guess what Uncle Sam does? He takes his first.
Yeah, that's right.
Off the gross. I know. Personally.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even want to think about it.
Pastor, will you answer the question a little, in a smaller way than Dick asked? Because I got lost.
Should we still tithe?
If we tithe, right? If we,
Here's how I'm going to answer that. Tithing for the New Testament saint is the floor, not the ceiling. It's the floor. It's basic. It's what I should be doing. For the New Testament saint, I ought to be giving sacrificially. Now, here's one of the reasons why that sometimes doesn't happen. Because we have not structured our budget and our life to allow us to give optimally. And so we wind up missing the blessing that we could receive. And I'll be honest with you, I turned 50 in a couple of months, and I wish somebody explained this to me when I was 20. I don't know if I would listen, but wish somebody would have at least told me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we must realize that, or I must realize that everything I have comes from God. I wouldn't have had that income to worry about whether I gave 10% off the net of the gross if it wasn't for his blessing.
That's right. All things come from thee, O Lord, and of thine own have we given thee. That's the little statement we used to say when I was growing up. Because it's all his. Yeah.
But when I first heard that statement about, especially when it comes to money and the fact that it belongs to God and how he wants you to be a good steward, he wants you to do the 10% and probably more, but he also wants you to be a good steward over the 80%. So when I started thinking about that, it really helped me like with saving because, you know, in order to be a good steward over God's money, then I have to, you know, better plan.
He doesn't want me to just do right by the giving. He wants me to do right by the saving. That's why in Proverbs it says, go to the ant, O sluggard. Mm-hmm. And he gives us the example of the ant that stores up for the winter time. I was having a conversation with a guy, and he was telling me the story of a man that pulled all his money out of his retirement account. And he told the guy, please don't do this. And the guy said, why? It's my money, I won't spend it. He said, if you don't spend it, in 4 years, you'll have 3 times as much money as you have right now. He said, what do you mean? And he showed him the tables of how much money he had, how the money was being invested, what kind of return he was getting on his money. And his money was growing exponentially. But what he decided to do was take it out. So not only does he take out the dollar, but then he takes out the dollars that that dollar makes.
Of course, I'm
By the way, I mentioned this Sunday, Reach Church, starting on September the something, is going to have Financial Peace University right across the street from us. And if you know anybody that's not being a good steward of their money, they need to take that class. I'm going to take the class just so I can learn how to do things better.
Well, do you know what day of the week that's on?
The flyers out there.
Okay, I'll pick it up. Let's see.
But pass it on, especially to anybody you know is under the age of 50 because they are in their peak earning years. Between 30 and 50 is what they say, but I don't know if that's true. Okay. All right, what other questions do you have? Ask Pastor. Nothing burning. Okay. All right. So, starting on September.
Pastor.
Yes, Rev.
September 13th, Peace University Reach Church. The
13th. 13th. September 13th is when Financial Peace University starts at Reach Church. But you need to register in advance because there's some materials you need to purchase if you're going to take the class. Okay? So, starting on September the 12th, we're going to start the book, Know What You Believe. Oh, I was in a meeting and I had Robert's Rules of Order pulled up because I'm a real Baptist. So we will be starting this book, Know What You Believe, on September the 12th. Okay? If you already have the book, and you should, please read chapter 1 for that day. Okay? In the back of the book, there are discussion questions for each chapter. We have those printed off for you so you can write them out large. But if you want to go ahead and answer in anticipation of that Bible study, feel free. Next week, you'll get another break because we will be at the National Baptist Convention. Okay. All right. Anything else that I might have forgotten?
15th of September.
15th of September is Leadership Council, and leaders need to be reading Simple Church, chapters 5 and 6, I think is what we had.
I thought you said 4.
But we got an email.
I don't know. Go back and look at the text I had Reverend Jones send. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Rev. And thank you, Sister Bonnie, because you just answered one of the questions somebody else was asking online. So, all right.
Just sent you something.
I just got it. That one? Oh, wait.
5 and 6.
Yes, we just answered that question. Sister Bonnie. Yeah. Chapter 5 and 6 is what we need to be reading for Simple Church for leadership. Okay? All right, let's go. Please keep those of us that are traveling to Minnesota in your prayers. If you would. It's good to see our chairman back from being out of town.
Yeah.
Good to be back. Father in heaven, we thank you and we give you praise, God, for your word and the truth of your word, how expansive it is. And yet, God, in all of its expanse, we find it to be intimate because when we read it, you speak to us through it. And so we thank you for that. God, we ask you to keep us as we leave from this place. We ask you a special blessing upon Brother David Andrew as he spreads your word literally. God, that you would give him great success. And then we ask, God, that you would touch our brothers and sisters who are grieving, those who have lost loved ones. We lift them up to you in the name of Jesus.